Today, I am going to be sharing some personal experiences and some general information around how the universe mirrors back to us our thoughts and beliefs, our feelings, and in general, how this cosmic law, the law of correspondence, works, the cause and effect of our experience as within, so without. And I remember being in that old pattern of people pleasing where I was often being interrupted during conversation. Now, you have to remember, if you've seen any of my previous videos, that my voice was very shut down, as may be the case for a lot of you that resonate with this material. But I don't know that it's everybody who might find themselves in people-pleasing patterns, but mine was extreme. My voice was shut down. But as I got older into my adulthood and I kept trying to practice the material that I read in books and workshops about being assertive and using my voice, then I began to speak up more. And even when I did, I would often be interrupted. So when I woke up this morning, this is what dropped into my conscious awareness about these people-pleasing days, and when I would often consistently be interrupted. And the cause and effect is where you are projecting your inner world onto your external experiences, your relationships, your external circumstances. And therefore, the physical world acts as a mirror, revealing your thoughts, your conscious thoughts, and your unconscious thoughts. So being mirrored was when I would be interrupted, what was being reflected back to me was my low self-worth and how I felt I didn't deserve to be heard. I was unconsciously rejecting myself and repeatedly interrupted and ignored as a result. And the second reason that this was likely to happen would be because that in my conversation, there would be a lot of gaps. As you may have noticed in my video recordings, like now, it takes me a minute to express what I am feeling and thinking because of the ADD diagnosis, attention deficit disorder, which is a result of my childhood trauma. Something in your brain shuts down and causes receptive and expressive delays where we can't neurologically receive the words that we want to say, especially when we're in public or out in conversation. I know that, especially when I'm by myself, if I'm, thinking about what I want to say in a video or whatever, I can say it and the words come to me, what I want to express easily. But as soon as I get in front of someone or in front of the camera, it's like that receptivity slows down. But Dr. Gabor Mate talks about that in his book, Scattered Minds, and how this ADD situation, receptivity and expressive delays, are caused from childhood trauma and how you can heal it. So I recommend that book, Scattered Minds. So there's the second reason why I was often interrupted. And the third reason would be because I was, as a people pleaser, I was continually over filtering my words, analyzing everything that came into my mind to say because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And so there was that gap for those two reasons. So you can see how my speech in conversations was somewhat fragmented and less anchored for those two reasons, from second guessing myself and from my inner beliefs of not being worthy to be heard. I am very curious if anyone else often experiences this in their conversations. You experience being interrupted or just subtly ignored in conversation. If that's happening to you consistently, I would love to know if you would put that in the comments. And the first reason of how it is a reflection of your inner world can be you feel like your voice isn't that important. That childhood programming makes you feel this way. What others say is more important than what I say. And it can show up unconsciously in a softer tone when you're in conversation. And I would often, my words would trail off like they got softer and softer. Like I was afraid to be heard. I was trying to speak out, but I was afraid to be heard unconsciously. And even when I was saying something, it would trail off with inflection, more like it was a question rather than a statement, because I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid of upsetting somebody. I was a people pleaser. And then just being in situations where when you were interrupted or when you are interrupted, you quickly yield to it. You don't hesitate to just stop talking. When somebody rudely interrupts you as you're speaking, and I would do it many times, I would just stop talking. And so we're going to talk about that too a little bit in a minute. And it leads into this next situation where don't take everyone's behavior as a mirror of what's inside of you. Because there are times and situations where some people just do that. That's the way they communicate. That's what they learned from their childhood experience, is that they needed to interrupt. But that doesn't make it okay. So not taking this mirror cause and effect law of correspondence too literally, because then you start blaming yourself for other people's behavior when it's not your responsibility. But both of the situations are always a chance for you to reflect inside yourself and step up to an invitation that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So it's important when you are interrupted to learn how to stay the path. There's something you want to say, and you want to own your boundaries, even when you're surrounded by people who generally interrupt, especially then. But even when you are doing it because of it's a reflection of your low self-worth and you feel like what other people have to say is more important. So in both situations, you want to step up to the invitation of choosing a new way to communicate. Don't just shut down when you're interrupted. You want to be in a place where you value your own voice more clearly. Hold your space a little bit longer. Finish your sentence. Not necessarily louder, just continuing to anchor and finish your thought. Please allow me to finish. Not faster, but slowing your pace. And this signals an anchored presence. And I have practiced both of these. I have practiced it. And it does help you in learning to choose a new way to communicate. And it does get easier every time you use these techniques. But I want to talk about how I was in a job situation for 3 years. And going into that job, I've talked about this on other videos, so I won't go too deep into it. But I want to give you the overall picture of how it reflects back to what I'm talking about here. I did not want to go into that job. I did not want to accept that position. I knew the person and I knew what it would be like, but it was an initiation for me. My guides were telling me I needed to take this job because it was going to be a big opportunity for me to put into practice everything I had learned about healing from people pleasing and using my voice. And that's exactly what it was every day. So I took the position. And after 3 years of developing and standing in my boundaries, standing up to these two people that worked at this office, standing up to their controlling and manipulating ways of communicating and being, after 3 years, it was time for me to take myself out of that situation because I had learned the lessons. I had put into practice what I knew to be true, and I had put into practice voicing my positions on things and standing in my boundaries. And this is giving you the example of how some surroundings are just like that and how we can't always take the law of correspondence as a mirror, as cause and effect, because after 3 years, I had learned all the lessons and put all my boundaries in place, stood in my boundaries, but their behavior continued. Their controlling and manipulating behaviors of interrupting and ignoring me and treating me that way continued because that was their behaviors. So I didn't need to blame myself for that. After I'd learned all the lessons, it was time for me to leave. But at that point, my guides showed me, unbeknownst to me at the time, that it was time for me to quit working there. And when they started putting that into my experience, I was like, but I hadn't planned on quitting. I need an income. I'm single. But they showed me how. I followed the breadcrumbs and they showed me how I could make that happen, resigning from that position. And that's where I am today. I'm semi-retired and I work very little, just every now and then. But that's in some of my previous videos if you want to go back and explore any of those. So in both of these scenarios where you are often interrupted in conversations and ignored in conversations, what you're saying is being ignored. And they can be either a mirror or they can be just somebody's general way of being. And the pattern, I can't read my own writing. Oh, the pattern of it being a mirror and the general environment is showing up so that you can practice and learn to open your voice, stand in your boundaries, say what you need to say. And Jesus has always said that there is a kind way to say everything, anything that you need to say. And I have been practicing that for years and found that yes, it is. And even when you say it in a kind way, that doesn't mean the other person is not going to be triggered. And that's okay, because that's their trigger. That's their place for healing. But you need to say what you need to say. And we always want to say it in a kind way. Now, starting out early on, trying to voice your thoughts and feelings when you feel you need to isn't always going to come out as kind as you would want them to. That's because the suppressed anger and frustration is inside of you, and it's going to come out, if not a lot, a little bit, in some of these attempts to use your voice. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Nobody is perfect, but it is necessary to go through those early steps for you to get better and better at it. So don't be hard on yourself ever. Always be gentle with yourself in any situation. You are doing the very best you can with what you know and how you need to do it the best way you can. So I was transmitting an energy healing transmission. I hit record and I was beginning the energy transmission, and it was very strong. The energy coming through was very strong. And then I happened to open my eyes and it had stopped recording. So I picked up my angel cards and I asked my guides, is it a good decision for me to re-record and include an energy transmission in this video? And I got the answer, unlikely for the reasons you think. So I decided to come back on and explain that to you, because healing is all part of following the guidance, learning that our thoughts are not our own. Everything is put into our mind, either from ego activity or from higher guidance, which is from all of the above. I'll say mainly our higher self. Everything funnels down and through our higher self into our thoughts. Everything from the ascended masters, the angels, source, overlighting energy, everything funnels down and through our higher self. So thoughts are not our own. Thoughts are universal. They're not individual to us. So learning to discern this is so important in your daily practice of healing from people pleasing, of healing from childhood trauma in general. And I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. So, albeit I am not going to re record another energy transmission today, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm learning to be okay with that. And I did notice that this morning I had so many different topics dropping in to my mind about things I can record and things I want to record. So I hope to get a lot of those recorded if that's what continues to be in my experience as important. and timely. But until then, from me and my higher self and all our friends in high places, we see you, we honor you, we love you, and we trust you. Blessed be. Talk to you next time.